All right, so this next talk is the first in a series of talks this afternoon that really stresses, or maybe not stresses, but emphasizes our goals of having the amateur community collaborate with the professional community and vice versa. And this talk is also very special to me because I did my PhD at the Virginia Tech SuperDARN lab under the advisement of Dr. Michael Ruohoniemi and Dr. Joseph Baker. And I'm very glad that we're able to continue collaborating and working together years later. So their graduate student, Allison Pitzl, is going to give a presentation now about phase coding in digital SuperDARN radars to observe multistatic propagation modes. And I'm hoping that at some point, our personal space weather stations might be useful to help receive SuperDARN signals and use that as yet another source of ionospheric measurement. So please welcome to the podium, Allison Pitzl, N4EON.
All right. Hi, I'm Allison. He already introduced me. I'm a second-year master's student with the Virginia Tech SuperDARN group. I'm going to talk to you today about using phase coding with the SuperDARN HF radars to enable multistatic operation modes. So what is SuperDARN? SuperDARN, most of you probably already know, but for those who don't, it's a network of HF radars in the mid to high latitude regions. There's about 35 operational radars right now. They're used to study space weather effects on the ionosphere, like things like convection, traveling ionospheric disturbances, and magnetospheric influence on the ionosphere. Picture on the left is the array from my home radar in Blackstone, Virginia, not to be confused with Blacksburg, Virginia, about 3 hours away. Each radar transmits a single frequency multi-pulse sequence between 8 to 20 megahertz, but we typically use the band in between 10 to 14 megahertz. We measure coherent backscatter from the ionosphere and to the ground. On the right there is an example of a fan plot you would see if you use, the interactive plotting tool on the SuperDARN website. It measures line of sight Doppler with the ionosphere. So in that plot, blue is returns going away from the radar, and red are returns traveling towards the radar. The pulses individually, in each pulse sequence, the individual pulses are either 300 microseconds, corresponding to 45 kilometer range resolution, or 100 microseconds for 15 kilometer range separation. And they operate in a monostatic fashion. So each radar transmits and receives its own signal. So who can hear SuperDARN? It's incredibly easy to pick up. I found that out recently. Apparently, hams and shortwave listeners have been affectionately calling it the grasshopper. I guess that's a callback to the woodpecker, but I've never really heard anyone call it that in real life outside shortwave listening forum posts. Anyone can pick these radars up. Easiest method is probably using web SDRs. If you want to actually get baseband data, you're going to have to use your own software-defined radio. Cheapest option is probably the RTL SDR v4. This screenshot right here is from when, so I use this web SDR in Knoxville, Tennessee a lot when I'm listening to Blackstone because it's right in the line of sight of the radar, just when I'm running experimental modes. On this day in particular, I was running an experimental pulse compression mode, and after my initial horror of seeing the bandwidth quadrupled in size, that's not supposed to happen, I realized that I was actually receiving 3 different radars, 3 different SuperDARN radars. And by process of elimination, I have access to scheduling of several North American radars. I determined that the one on the very right is Fort Hays East, and the other ones are probably the ones listed, located in Christmas Valley, which is in Oregon. So, but I mean, that kind of goes into the purpose of the rest of the talk is I could be completely wrong. it's really hard to tell these radars apart because their pulse sequences are so similar. So a little bit of very recent history. Around the time of the solar eclipse in 2024, there was an effort to convert SuperDARN radars to use the EDIS USRP USRP X300 SDRs. This makes it really easy, well, easy in quotation marks, to modulate the transmit pulse. You don't have to mess with any like analog hardware, and it's as easy as making a Python script. One of the operating modes that we use right now is called P-code scan or phase code scan. It's pretty straightforward. It's like a pulse compression technique. You just have the regular pulse, which is like a carrier signal, and then you modulate it with binary sequence. So for ideal autocorrelation properties, we're using Barker codes, and very common one we use is the 5-baud Barker code. And the chip length in each one of these sequences, or in this sequence in particular, is about 100 microseconds, which corresponds to 15-kilometer range separation. Using this technique, range separation is no longer tied to the length of each individual pulse, but the bit in the sequence. This enables the operator to operate at a higher resolution without compromising in the returned power. So this is kind of a side quest for my actual thesis, so bear with me on my level of completeness here. With a small modification to phase code scan, I created a separate control program called P-code ID. Instead of using a Barker code, I'm assigning a 4-bit radar ID to each radar. 4 bits is not a lot, but we also don't have a lot of radars using this SDR hardware yet, so I'm leaving it open to scale. And also learning digital signal processing by throwing myself into the fire. This is a really good exercise in learning like GNU Radio Companion and such. And I realized it's impossible to have a random receiver know that the phase of an incoming signal is 1 or 0 without setting a reference. So for this rest of the way I've approached this, I set the first bit as the reference as 1 to compare against from the rest of the processing. So I tested this in the lab. I set up a SDR in the lab to record phase code ID transmissions from the test radar. The illustration is the configuration I used, except I also tested it on my laptop just to see the amount of noise or complications that would arise from that. The Python processing is done completely in GNU Radio, which most people are familiar with, but for those who aren't, it's a very quirky open source DSP modeling sandbox. I had a very brief conversation with Phil, KA9Q, earlier, and he made me feel very much like a caveman with a hammer about the way I've completely approached this problem. So I'm going to have to talk to him more about it. As expected, when I was using the USRP as a receiver, the performance was fantastic. It was decoding everything really well, and I barely had to do anything to make it work. But I really want this to be a ham radio project. But I'm also a student, so I have a budget of $0. So I borrowed my friend's RTL SDR V4, which is different from the V3 because this one has direct sampling on HF. You can actually record IQ data on HF with it. And I saw if I could just get it to decode stuff. When I put it in this configuration, connected to the lab PC, and I tried it on 2 different laptops, I had to put a decimation and a filter at the source because the output was so noisy, it was crashing everything. But I managed to get it such that it was IDing pulses correctly most of the time. So yeah, it was either the thing that I was very impressed by was that it wasn't flagging wrong sequences. It was just identifying things, and if it didn't make complete sense, it was just throwing it out. So I consider that a success because of how many pulses are contained within an integration sequence. Okay, so I hope people find this slide funny. My only opening to run this was on Blackstone last week. I lined up like kind of a receive window with a friend of a friend who is located in Knoxville with a nice HF SDR and a mag loop antenna, and he was going to send me the IQ data that he received from Blackstone Radar running my control program. But as a cruel twist of fate, the Blackstone Radar PC had a kernel panic right after I uploaded the schedule file, and the site guy was unavailable to troubleshoot it until a couple days later. But when we finally got him back and we talked him through how to like boot into grub, select a different kernel, et cetera, my Knoxville contact had a family emergency and couldn't play radio with me anymore. So last-ditch effort, I made a dipole out of trash and I threw it in my neighbor's tree, and my neighbor also had solar panels installed. But, I mean, it's not a complete failure because you can see Blackstone right there. Like, it's just, like, really super quiet, you know, with a harmonic right on it. But I did get a few seconds of Blackstone recorded on an RTL SDR v4 without harmonics, like their inverter turned off or something. And I tested it on my pulse detection algorithm, and it just didn't work. And I'm like, okay, so I have an SNR problem that I need to like figure out. So I got kind of like channel effects to, you know, work against. So before I really do a lot more work on this, I think that the bottleneck is just the hardware I'm working with. So I initially developed this to work on a USERP, but those are prohibitively expensive, and I can't expect that to be a community, you know, piece of hardware to expect, like, for people to get. Oh yeah, and like working with the RTL SDRs is just too sketchy. So here's a list of promising receivers I found. I've heard the RX888 mentioned several times. So maybe like because everybody's familiar with that one, that's probably the move. Really funny thing with the RTL SDR, I was like, oh, maybe I should get one and just like play around with the external clocks and stuff. And I found a guide to making it interface with an external clock. But I wouldn't do any serious science with that. I don't know. That's just me. So this is very inspired by some past research that was done. It comes from the work done in 2019 to 2020, done by Simon Shepard. They ran a series of bistatic experiments between Christmas Valley East, which is in Oregon, and Fort Hays West, which is in Kansas. They're separated by like 1,800 kilometers. Christmas Valley East was forced to be receive only, while Fort Hays West received normally. They identified 3 different types of bistatic transmission modes: ionospheric scatter, ground scatter, and direct mode propagation. The purpose of this experiment was really to demonstrate a straightforward way to operate radars in bistatic mode, but as a consequence, the normal operation of the radars was disrupted. So my hope is that with phase code ID, that it'll offer a different approach. If receivers at arbitrary locations can identify which SuperDARN radar they're hearing, you can get multi-static coverage without disrupting normal operation. It also comes with the added benefit of 15-kilometer range separation just because of the phase coding involved in it. This expands the observable volume to include scatter that monostatic geometry can't capture. Ray paths bent in the azimuthal direction, propagation modes that skip over the radars like own field of view, etc. Oh yeah, I should mention that Blacksburg, where I threw that garbage antenna in my tree, that is technically outside of the Blackstone field of view. So I was receiving Blackstone outside of its field of view. I don't know if that was from scatter or an antenna side lobe or whatever, but it is pretty cool. So yeah, where I'm hoping this could go is, I don't know, like gathering data on a real receiver first. It's hard to write detection code without an idea of how channel effects and interference from even other SuperDARN radars will affect the data. And yeah, beyond that, the vision is a distributed network of low-cost receivers at known locations, building potentially on the HamSCI infrastructure. So yeah, this community already has experience like with distributed HF receivers, and I think this would be definitely in your wheelhouse. So yeah, that's it for me. Any questions, concerns, input? I would appreciate all of that.
Thank you. Hi, Allison. That was really interesting, and I appreciate you showing this. I'm just going to have some comments for you, but I'd really like to introduce you to some people. So, I mean, not really questions here and now, but when you get a chance, let's get together. I'll put you in touch with some people that I think can really help. So let's catch up, and I think we can be useful here. Thank you.
Can I get your name?
Yeah. Paul Elliott, WB6CXC.
Oh.
Paul Elliott, Whiskey Bravo 6, Charlie, X-Ray Charlie.
All right.
Other questions?
Why don't you meet up right up? We're on a break next. So go right over there and see Paul.
All right.
One more question from Dr. Kasdan.
Excellent talk, interesting material. Thank you so much. The idea of the coding to distinguish one radar from another and the phase synchronization burst at the beginning of it. How'd you happen to come up with that one? It's a little bit similar to the old analog television color burst system.
I tried, I don't know, first I tried differential BPSK decoding, but it wasn't working well. I had like so I have like a new radio companion. I got 2 blocks. I'm working with 2 different ways, and my differential BPSK one lost against the just setting like a pilot bit. I mean, like, okay, so thinking of it like from a radio's perspective, like, I don't know, like, just thinking of it intuitively, I couldn't figure out how a radio could figure out if something was 180 degree flipped or not. Because when you look at an oscilloscope, it's like totally ambiguous.
I don't have the microphone, but have you looked at how Costas loops? Thanks. Have you looked at how Costas loop decoding works?
No.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. I know. This is great.
All right. Thank you so much, Allison. That was a wonderful talk, and I certainly hope we can help you with your goal of getting many receivers in known locations to receive your signals.